talking about trading then, so transitioning there, in terms of trading, what was the process like? Obviously, I can imagine it'll be very...
Yeah.
But like, what was the process like of, going from that learning stage, having these pressures, etc., the gaming business coming to an end, but then you getting to that consistency?
Yeah, I would say I'm a bit luckier than most people in the sense of, and I think you'll agree with me on this, like prop firms didn't really exist when we started. So back then, you either had the money or you had like, I don't know, 10K that you'd compound for years, or you'd find investor capital. So I had some money, and as well as like, I was like, okay, I'll find investor capital. And in a way, it made me more serious about it.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is like, you can open an FTMO today, fail it, and you'll just get that email that they're like, sorry, bro, unlucky. Whereas in real life, if you lost someone's money, they're not going to be like, it's okay, man. Like, you lost 20% in 2 days. It is what it is. It's like, you might have permanently burnt your bridge from that point of view, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, and again, assuming a normal network of people, you probably only know 1 or 2 people that can give you capital, if anything, right? So there was a side of kind of like looking at like, you have like one shot, like one I didn't mean to go Eminem there. And I was like, kept saying I don't even know Eminem, right? And I was like quoting him. But there was a side of like, you only have one chance to scale up. So there was the side of like, you have to be ready. And for myself at a time, I was like, dude, you got to be really serious at this. You have to have done enough time. And even from an experience point of view, I was like, when I approach this investor, what are they going to ask me? And I was like, they're going to ask me, how long you been trading? I'm going to be like 6 months. And I'm like, are they going to be excited to give me 100K? Or are they going to be like, dude, you're a child?
Yeah.
So that was actually kind of the perspective I kept in. And I was like, wait, no, you need to like do this right. Because if you don't, there's no second chances. Now, prop firms came, and I'm very pro prop firms, like objectively speaking. I think it's phenomenal for capable traders and all those things. But I would say the seriousness was there. And, at some point I said I was an IP, and then I ended up switching over to Falcon just because then funny enough, before I even switched trading, I was already I was kind of basically full-time at that point in my previous community. So it wasn't one of those like, I kind of hopped on the next like popular thing. I was actually already doing well. And at the time, the only reason that I did it was because Mark, he was posting a lot more of his trades back then. And I remember I caught the same trade like him like 4 times over the course of like 2-3 months, but he made more on every single trade. And I was like, wait, this is not just like I'm trading something and I hear about this random dude who's killing it. I was like, we are looking at the exact same thing. He broke it down, and I was like, I kind of know because Falcon Trades market structure was I kind of trade at the time was like a fib-based or support resistance EMA, right? But a lot of like the Elliott wave side of things do coincide from that point of view. And I was like, okay, I'm seeing with you and I'm losing you here. And then you're somehow getting more risk to reward there, right? And at some point where I was like, okay, and it fell because the previous strategy was trading with like profit targets and stuff. And maybe I didn't fully understand it the way I could have. But part of me, I was like, we're leaving a lot on the table. I was like, because a lot of it was like, hey, get out at like the 50 EMA here or whatever. Even though that increased your strike rate, on the days that the market was explosive, I was like, how would you catch this? I was like, there's a lot of things that you get out before.
Yeah.
The only time you'd ever really catch all that if it just kind of just went immediately, right? Which, again, from a sample size is very small. So at that point, I was like, you know what? Let me see this out. And I made the switch. And in a way, when I made the switch, because I was already trading at that point for 2 years, right? So I was already trading for 2 years. I knew all the mistakes I made as a student, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, let's do it. It's a new start. Let's do it right. And all the mistakes that, whether that meant like being a bit more lackluster on the weekends or not giving it his time or rushing certain parts, I was like, let's start over from there, right? And then I did, and I continued, and I realized, and one of the most beautiful parts about it is the previous way I started was more of a strategy to me. This was more of like an understanding of the market, and it resonated with me more because the way I would explain it, I guess, is more of like a play style, like for a soccer player or whatever. These are the rules of the game, and you can realize this is where it's best to shoot from, this is whatever. But if you get good enough at it, then eventually you can kind of do the more advanced moves yourself. We realize, wait, I know what I can get away with because I've seen it. So there was the part to me, whereas the previous strategy, what I didn't like about it, like around the EMA and stuff like that is, again, I kind of looked at it from like a poker, like your cards are face up. I was like, if you know I'm going to get out of the 50 EMA, eventually in time, isn't that like, can someone else take the opposite side of the trade if you know what I'm going to do here, so to speak? So that was the side of like, I was like, no, but if I'm playing something less in a strategic way and more to do with like a capability or a skill set, but it's understanding how the piece of the puzzle fit together, I was like, you can't take that away from me. And it was beautiful because we trade price action, right? Objectively, we don't need anything on the chart. You can just like, the trend lines are just there to like, it looks cool, I guess, but like well and truly, you don't actually need it. Versus you did need the fibs, you did need the MA, you did need these like precise.
To be.
Yeah, right? Which again, the strategy works. I'm not shit talking. It still works to today.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It was just a side of me that I was like,
it just didn't resonate with you properly.
Yeah, that's it, And I was like, you know what? Like, it just felt like I was like still a bit more handcuffed in a way. Whereas like Falcon kind of removed those handcuffs, you know. And the side about it as well is obviously Mark, what's cool about it is he was just so ahead of his time, so to speak.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like that's the part that in a way, and maybe call me utilitarian for this, but it's like kind of backing the right horse in a way where it's like, you'd see some people that like, look, you have traders that kill it on funded accounts and fair enough, but they're still objectively young. Like I'm not shit talking I'm just saying like someone who's, I don't know, 25 or whatever, right? And you could argue that about me, but it's like, I'm under Mark, right? So it's like, I'm not like the face of actually Falcon, so to speak. I think he's traded like 17 years now or whatever.
Yeah.
And there was a side of me, I was like, anything I can experience, he likely knows, you know? So even like within like the Falcon infrastructure, like we have like in-house prop firm, so to speak, right? To create that, it's like, we're not partnered with FTMO. And again, this is not anti-FTMO, but it's like our own cap, like it's backed by its own capital or whatever, because it doesn't profit off assessment fees. It's like, it's legitimate capital in that point of view, right? Whereas if you look at FCMO side of things, like, yes, they have their legitimate side and they have their like income coming in from the assessment fees. Whereas we don't have that part. It's backed by like true capital in that way, and it forces the education to grow. But my point is, for Mark to create that, that's not something that you just create. You don't just open your own prop firm overnight. And to make sure that I can actually stay around. So there was a big part of like, when you scale up, there's the lessons that come with it. And then there's also the experience of living there long enough, right? And what I mean by that is like, again, as soon as you kind of like I remember the first time trading like a 100K account, right? It's still weird. You're just not like you don't just pass your assessment and then you're like, that's it. I know how to trade 6 figures. We're good. It takes an adjustment. Even seeing like $4,000 fluctuate the first time. Again, I was familiar with it from history, but on its own, I was like, yo, this is different. This is new, you know, this is all these things. And so in a way, looking at Mark, I think there was a high degree of security from that point of view, and realizing, like, I think Falcon now is almost 7 years old, that it's like, they've done everything right to kind of build a deep foundation. And it was a part of me kind of looking afterwards. And honestly, that was just a question I asked afterwards. I was like, okay, if I hit consistency and I scale up, I was like, am I just going to go on my own afterwards? And, you know, fair enough to people that do. But there's a side of me, I was like, no, but there's so much more. Like, this is someone who's actually building generational wealth. So he knows things about like guaranteed income. He knows about like portfolio diversification. He knows all these things that someone may tell to you from a math point of view. Because like mathematically speaking, I guess in theory, if you reinvest your trading like yourself, it's probably the most mathematical smart way. But there's the side that doesn't factor in that lifestyle doesn't infinitely scale. Like at some point for myself even is I love my restaurants, right? And it's my go-to activity. If you open IG, even this week on New York, I'm like, someone messages like, Abdu's just always eating. That's what I'm doing, right? And then, but the thing is the bill does not infinitely go up. Like even as I've my own capital scaled up and I got better and wealthier, the restaurant bill is still like $200. You know what I mean? Like it didn't just randomly say, oh, you made 36% this month. This bill now today for the same exact meal is $15K. It's like, no, it's capped, right? So at some point, your own perspective shifts because you're no longer chasing that wealth. Yes, you still ASR. Yes, you still look at things of, oh, I could have done that better. I could have done this, but you're not like rushing to scale because you kind of realize you're living the life you wanted. So your own risk assessments actually even change. That's the part a lot of people don't even consider. They look at it, they're like, why would you not make the most amount of money you could? And it's almost because of the effort and then the risk associated with it. And that's why you actually realize with a lot of like actually wealthy people, they do not want their wealth and their management of wealth to like fluctuate. They want like those small gains along the way because they have everything they want. So all they think that they're chasing now is guaranteed growth, right? And usually, yes, beating the standard benchmark metrics and all that. But they're not looking at the guys, hey, can you make me 600% in a year? But at some point in the year, their account is down like 40% or whatever. They're not interested in that because there's too much to physically lose. So I guess in a way, like Falcon was super cool with that because I saw someone who, one, had been doing it for very long, you know, and versus a lot of other people, for instance, just started to trade and then were teaching. I was like, well, even though you achieved the thing itself, are you credible? Because have you lived long enough to kind of see it and then do all those things? And it's the little things from just, I said that like life wisdom in a way. So that part to me was like super important. Because even within it, like loyalty, unironically, I guess this kind of became a thing, is like loyalty is very high in Falcon, so to speak. So as Falcon grows, it rewards its students that have like stood through, so to speak, right? So even for myself, like I don't know if like what my pathway was. I never thought like at some point in time I was like, yeah, one day I'm gonna like become a trading coach or whatever. I was just one of the people that like got good and stayed within Falcon. We became friends and we talked. And one day he was like, hey, you have like you're good at teaching. You're very good at what you do. Extended the opportunity, and I was like, you know what, like yeah, this is cool. Like why not? And it's fun because there's no conflict of interest in the sense of like, I can teach you what I know. We can both catch Eurodollar and we can both profit. Versus if I caught Eurodollar and then now you catching it somehow made me like less money, no, there'd be a problem there, right? And for the Falcon strategy to get like dominant enough for it to not work anymore, so to speak, you would need thousands of traders all trading so much money it's the side of like it's very unlikely, right? Like
100%.
like so that was the side of like it actually became meaningful to pass it on to other people, because you realize you're like, for those that do put in the work and those that do like can grow up and are looking at things the right way, it just became such a great place to do that. Obviously, of course, not everyone commits, and that's perfectly fine. I understand. But for myself, it was a very meaningful way to progress in that point of view.
100%.